Dominated cable news for weeks, actually years now, culminating in the verdict on Tuesday and her sentencing today. A jury's decision that the Florida mother was not guilty of her 2-year-old daughter's murder sparked widespread disbelief and outrage. Anthony was found guilty of lying to police, in part because she did not report Kaylee missing for more than a month. Now, as it turns out, failing to report a missing child is not a crime in New York. However, my next guest would like to see that changed. Assemblywoman Grace Meng joins me from New York City to talk about the legislation she is drafting that would require parents and caretakers to notify police within a timely manner of a missing child. Assemblywoman, thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Liz. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. Okay, so obviously this is a very hot topic. And how did it come to your attention that, in fact, you do not have to report your child missing in New York, from a criminal standpoint at any rate?
Well, I think regardless of how we feel about the verdict, as an attorney, I respect the process, I respect the jury's decision, but I think there's one thing, one element that none of us can get out of our heads, is that how Ms. Anthony went for almost 6 weeks without reporting her toddler's disappearance to the authorities completely baffles me.
And then, so that you actually note, you wrote a letter to the DA's Association, and you note that you have 2 young children of your own, and you, of course, you say would immediately report their missing if they were missing. But at this point, weeks or even months could go by in New York, and a person would not be culpable. Is that right?
Right. I mean, if my kids were to go missing for even 30, 45 seconds, I would be in shock. I would not know what to do, but I know I would immediately notify the authorities. In New York right now, it's not a felony or a crime for someone not to report. Now, in New York, you know that if you even harm a child, whether it's your own child or someone you have custody of, ACS will step in, the state will step in. But if your child disappears or dies, you have no legal obligation right now to inform the authorities.
So here's the thing, though. You say in your letter a timely manner. What do you believe that means? Is it age appropriate? I mean, if your 12-year-old disappears, it's different than if your 2-year-old disappears, right?
Right, correct. And this case was obviously more shocking and emotional because of the young age of the child. I write timely manner, and I write to the District Attorneys Association of New York because I want to work closely with them. We are in talks, and hopefully we can come up with a good and legal definition of what timely manner means.
So the thing is, could there be a danger here that a person would be wrongly accused for being guilty of a crime when, in fact, it's not their fault? For example, like if your child is kidnapped, or if your child on their own accord disappears, then you don't report it because you think they're coming back, or maybe even you're being bribed in some way.
Well, I believe that as any parent or legal guardian, it's our duty, it's our responsibility to take care of a child. If my 10-year-old, if my 12-year-old disappears for more than 24 hours, even if it's not a potential crime, I think that is something to be alarmed about. And I think in this case, as with many cases, it's better to be safe than sorry. So if it ends up that it is, not a crime that occurred, I think it's still important to inform the authorities.
And what you're suggesting here is not a misdemeanor, but actually a felony offense. I mean, you're suggesting to make this a very serious crime, indeed. Why a felony and not a misdemeanor?
I think that the case of Ms. Casey Anthony really sparked the emotion and just violated everyone's common sense knowledge of why someone wouldn't report. In this case, we're not sure if the verdict was how we ourselves as individuals would have decided it, but there's one common element, one unifying emotion that I think all of us feel is that the severity of the situation was worsened, and the outcome could have been very different if the body had been found much sooner. So I think a felony in this case is appropriate.
Do you believe that had the body of this small child been found earlier, that perhaps the jury's verdict would have been different?
I believe so, and one of my main goals in proposing this legislation is to protect children. I'm not saying that this bill will prevent any children from ever being hurt again, but in the case where there is malice, where there is bad intention on the part of any so-called defendant, decreasing that lapse in time will not allow or not give so much room for someone to further hide or further expound on their motive or defense.
Yeah, I don't want to retry the Casey Anthony trial in this case, but you did note in your letter that you feel deeply saddened by the verdict, and I guess this is like water cooler conversation for everyone. Do you believe that this case in some way was mishandled by the prosecution and that she's in fact guilty as an attorney?
Well, as an attorney, I respect the process. I personally was not involved in any way, and I was not there in the courtroom, so I can't say. I have to respect the process, but again, the one thing that baffles all of us is why did she wait 6 weeks?
Yeah. So did you get a response yet from the District Attorneys Association to your letter, which you just actually sent on July 6th?
Right, we just sent the letter over. I've spoken to my own district attorney in Queens, Judge D.A. Brown. I've spoken to staff members of various DA's offices throughout the metropolitan New York area, and they're actually going to raise the issue this week with each other and try to come up with a solution.
Because they're having some kind of association, a get-together at this point. It's like an annual summer meeting for them?
Right. I believe they have one of their annual conferences at this time.
So, and you know, there's a habit in Albany, and I don't want to play into this too much either, but there's a habit of naming bills after people who motivate the legislation. Are you thinking about that here, that you would name this bill after Kaylee?
I think that would be one small way of seeking justice for little Kaylee. I think that she deserves that at the very least.
Well, Assemblywoman Grace Meng, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Of course, I think that everybody is really fascinated, perhaps a little bit sickened by this whole situation, and we'll be following this bill. I want to thank you very much for coming in to talk to us about it.
Thank you, Liz.